Welcome back to Proportions. You took a little break this week. We ventured Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday into area and circumference of circles, and then touched on percents yesterday, and we're back to proportions, which I told you we would be back and forth a lot for proportions. So yesterday you talked about percents, and I hope you know that the key to percents is percent means per 100. So keeping that in mind in working with the proportions that we are going to look at today. Okay, I'm going to read you 4 little sentences. It says, what is 6% of 90? Find 28% of 32. 15 is what percent of 78? 64% of what number is 30? Well, the books that we have tell us to solve each one of these problems a different way. Well, to be honest, I have a hard time remembering which way they want me to solve which problem. So I like to have one way that works for all of them. That way I don't have to worry about, am I doing it the right way? Because if I have one way that works for all of them, I know that I'm good to go. So before we start, I want us to look at some key words that we see in all of these problems. I see a lot of is's. I see a lot of ofs. And I see a lot of percents. So keeping that in mind, we're going to make us a rule real quick before we start solving these. So yesterday, if we go back to our proportion, yesterday you said, or we looked at, percent means per 100. So if you make 100 on the test, you got the whole test right. So 100 represents the whole amount or the whole test. And I'm just using test because you think of percents when you take tests all the time. Let's say if you made a 90, the percent that you got right was 90 out of the 100. So the part you got correct was 90 over the whole part of 100. So remember when we did proportions last week, we said it was crucial that we have, if we do part over whole, then on the other side we need to do part over whole. Like we had laps over minutes and laps over minutes, and we had cups of flour over pounds of fudge. We had to keep everything consistent. So today what we're going to look at is part over whole and part over whole. Well, when I bring this piece of paper back and I look at all of these key words that are in here, we already have the percent always goes over the 100. And if we fill in our other key words, then kind of a shortcut to remember is over of equals percent over 100. Is representing your part of a number, and of is telling us the whole amount. So let's look at this problem and see if we can decipher all of our parts. We always know it's going to be percent over 100. And I'm going to write in the corner real quickly the little cheat note we just made. And if I look at this, what is 6% of 90? Well, to me, the easiest thing to notice is that 6%. So I'm going to put 6 over 100. And then it says of 90. Of 90 is my whole. So of goes on the bottom. And then it says what is. That means that's our x. We don't know what it is. That's what we're looking for. So now this proportion should look like what we've been solving for several weeks. Remember, I like to go where my variable is. So we've got 100x, and then grab your calculator and do 90 times 6, which is going to be 540. And then if it's 100 times x, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we divide both sides by 100, which I'm pretty sure most of y'all can do that in your head. And we end up with 5.4. So 5.4 would be our 6% of that 90 that we were talking about. So let's look at this one and make sure it still works for us. So is over of, remember is the part and of is the whole, and that's percent over 100. So proportions are kind of like puzzles, and we got to put all the puzzle pieces in the right place. So I easily recognize, okay, there's a percent, and then it says of 32. So remember of, well, we got blurry there all of a sudden, sorry. Okay. Of 32, so of goes on the bottom, and then we have x. So we got 100x equals 32 times 28 896. And then we're going to divide both sides by 100, which again, you could probably do that in your head. And 8.96. So our x would be 8.96, which would be our 28% of that 32, okay? So this still works for us. So let's keep on. 2 more problems. I just like to jot this down just so we remember it. So we got 15 is, and then what percent, and of 32. Well, the last 2 problems I said, well, it was real easy to recognize the percent, but this time it says what percent. So that means we don't know the percent. So the percent is going to be our x. Where it says 15 is, that's the part. So we put is on top. So 15 is going to go on top. And of 32, that's going to go on the bottom. So remember, 100 is not going to always go with the x. So 32x this time equals 1500. So now what are we going to do with that 1500? And divide both of them by 32. $46.875. So if we talked about a percent, a lot of times it's easier to round the percents to the nearest whole number. So that 8 would make that go to 47%. And this time we would put a percent sign because that's actually what we're looking for, is the percent. Is over of equals percent over 100. So 64%, that was easy to recognize, and it says of what number is 30. So that is, and I don't know why this keeps getting out of focus. That is 30. Is on top. Of what number? That means we don't know what that's going to be. So we get 64x equals 3,000. So we're going to divide both sides by 64. So 3,000 divided by 64. $46.875, which that's kind of ironic that it ended up with the exact same answer, even though they were different numbers. So that is what's going to be our whole of the 30.